Have you ever watched someone paint a watercolour flower, tried it yourself, and yours behaved completely differently? It might not be the paint or the paper, it might be about the water. In this video, I'll show you the 3 water states that every beginner should know, so you'll know exactly how your paint will behave and you can try and predict it before you start painting. Let's get started. Let me just tell you about my materials I'm using. So I've got some Baohong paper, and that's 100% cotton, and it is cold press. I've split it into 3, as you can see. It is best to watch all 3 states, so it will make sense to you at the end. The first state, as you can see, is just lots of water being put down quite loosely, quite freely. So if you've not been to my channel before, I normally paint loose flowers and loose leaves, and I've kept it with a hint of colour so that you can see where the water is, and you can see the water is sort of puddling up, hence the first one is called puddle. Now watch what happens when we put some paint in. Look at that. As beautiful as it is, the water is doing the majority of the work. So you get this gorgeous, beautiful movement, but you lose some control. The paint can travel further than expected, and sometimes the colours mix and become muddy if you use more than 1 or 2 colours. You'll probably recognise this as the wet on wet technique as well, which I'm sure you've seen before. Look what happens when I try and put some details in whilst the water is so wet and there's so much of it. Of course, water is wet. But as you can see, as I'm trying to put in some details, you can see the little puddles gathering on the end of the lines. Let me show you here as well, where it's puddled, it's bleeding into the water. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want. I'm just trying to explain what happens when you use too much water and to recognise when you are using too much water. The way I would think of it is, if you have a puddle in your mind for when you want watercolours to create soft blends and natural effects for you, but you must also remember you will lose some of that control of the water. Don't fight it. Let it do what it wants to do. This bit here is really puddled up and there's quite a lot of water there. And this is where, when I was a beginner, I would feel overwhelmed, try and control it, try and add more colour to it, and try and get it to do what I want it to do. But there is no control with so much water. So if the first one was a lot of water, let's go to the other end of the spectrum and use hardly any water. So therefore I've called this one the dry state. So this means the paper is completely dry. Watercolour behaves very differently. I'm painting exactly the same flower, exactly the same shapes, and you can instantly see the difference to when we painted that first flower. You can see the sharp edges, you can see the crispness of the colour. You can predict where the paint is going to go because you're putting it where you want to put it, and the paint stays exactly where you want it. However, that softness isn't there like we did with the first state. With this dry state, nothing is spreading, nothing is going where we don't want it to go. This technique is called the wet on dry technique, and it's where, you could say it's where precision lives. We use this effect to add details, add the veins, add in the seeds, the centre of the flower, the stamen, things like that. But you need to wait for your painting to dry before you add details. In fact, I've picked up some blue so that you can see some details can be put in whilst this is in this state. You can still add in details, it just looks a bit unnatural, it doesn't look loose and free and flowy at all compared to the other one. I think it just depends what kind of a result you want at the end. The final state of water I want to explain is called the damp state. So this time, when you've rinsed your brush, dab it on a cloth and then pop your petals down the same way. I'm using the same example, and also if you do stick around, you will see how I put all these three together in a demonstration for you. But honestly, this is where watercolour starts feeling that little bit easier. The paper is still wet, but not as much as how it was at the puddle stage. And it's still, well, damp, nowhere near as dry as what it is in the dry stage. It is damp. It is somewhere in between. The paper contains the moisture, you just can't see it. Let me paint a bit more of that second flower as well in here, and then you can see exactly what I mean. By the way, whilst I'm just adding some more petals, please feel free to subscribe. It is free to subscribe to my channel, and what that means is you will get a notification when I've uploaded something, which at the minute is every Sunday. I have moved it from Fridays, but anyway, if you want to subscribe to other features of YouTube, then there may be like a monthly charge, but to subscribe to my channel, it is completely free. So now let's add a bit more colour, similar to how we did it earlier with the puddle stage. It doesn't race across the page like it did in that first flower. It only moves a little bit, and then it settles, it softens. This gives us the softer edge while still keeping control compared to the first one, and even the second one, because it's not wet at all, the dry state, you've still got no control in one sense because you want that softness. So this damp state is perfect for things like soft shadows, subtle gradients, and also layering colour as well, and adding depth. It's really handy to create those depth dimensions in your florals. So as you can see, I've added some details. You can still see some of the details. Compared to the puddle stage, the water sort of ate up the pigment, if you like. The pigment just dissolved into the water a little bit, but that's not happened here. So let's compare the three. The first flower, puddle, soft and flowy, a lot less water control. Second flower, dry, clean, sharp edges, good for details. And the last flower is in the damp state, best of both. Some natural flower edges and softer blends. The only thing that changed between all three was the amount of water, and that's the secret. As promised, let's put all of this together, starting with the puddle stage. You are one of the few that gets to see the whole process. So I'm using the same colour, and I'm using my go-to flower as well. This is the flower I paint quite a lot and mastered this. Well, I feel like I've mastered this as best as possible. And so as you can see, just popping down the first part of the flower, not too much water compared to in the example that I gave earlier. So I have enough water in my mixture. That's why I don't need to pick up any more water from the water cup. So I'm going to go in and add some little drops. Again, I've got plenty of water in the brush and on the mixture as well, so I don't need to grab any more water. And you could now say this is the damp stage, because it is quite hot in the UK, which is rare, but this is flowing really nicely. I feel like I've got control. I'm creating the nice soft blends. I'm going to put some on the edges as well. Look at that bit, that's blooming really nicely. I'm really liking that. Just do little bits, you don't need to do too much, and that's how you feel like you've got control as well. And I'm using quite a large brush, but I'm using the tippy pointy bit of the brush. That water's getting really muddy as well, I really should change that, but I've just made up some green, and I'm just going to add in a few watery leaves as well. Again, same, sorry, I keep saying again, same as what I showed you at the beginning, still using that puddle state of the water and keeping that mixture quite watery. And I'm just going to make up a very quick second shade of green and add that to the lighter green. I am just sort of testing it and just making sure it doesn't bleed and bloom too much, but this is perfect. This is bleeding and blooming really nicely into that leaf. I'm switching back to the size 8 silver black velvet brush. That other one was a size 12, and I'm just going to blend it all in and have it all mixed nicely on the page. I'm adding some blue to the red to make a slightly darker colour, which it makes purple. And I'm just going to go into that centre and start filling that out a little bit. It's still all a little bit damp, so we're still not quite at the dry stage yet. Let's refer back to our guidelines. So we've mostly done the puddle stage and we've done a bit in the damp stage. They're not 100% dry, it's more in between the damp and the dry stage. So we can still add a bit more and take advantage of that dampness. I feel like I've added too much here, so I'm just going to quickly blend that in. And the colour that I've added to the red is a quinacridone red, so it's slightly darker. So this is where we sort of start to panic. So I'm just going to pick up this cloth and just give it a dab and just take off some of that excess, because I think I added in a little bit too much. There we go, that is much better. And then we can build up the layers again. Try to curve your brush strokes a little bit, so you're going round the petal, and that gives it the illusion of a curved or a curving petal. And also, just another tip, make sure you rinse your brush in between each colour, otherwise you will get muddy colours. I know I need to change the water, I will in a minute. I just want to finish off this layer and then I will change the water. By the way, I just want to say thank you for any comments you've left, or if you've shared any of my videos, and for subscribing as well if you have already. I really do appreciate it. I am on TikTok as well. I'm at Bloom Art by SW. Feel free to message me on there or leave me a comment if you've got any questions. I will do my best to answer them. I'm just adding on the last few dark leaves, and then I've come back to it now with fresh clean water, and the stage we are at now is the dry state, so we can go in with some bold colours. Feel free to do as much or as little of the details as you would like. Don't feel like you have to do too much, because you don't. Just add it on in little areas. If you start off with doing not too much, you can always add more on. What we don't want to do is overpower the whole flower that we've just created, and we want to keep some of the white, keep some of the colour underneath as well. You're not covering over everything, you're adding highlights, and this is where the magic happens with watercolour. This is where you can make your subject really pop, really stand out. I've got a little bit of that accidental dry brush effect going on there, and that's something that I want to focus on as well. If you missed it, in one of my previous videos I did an effects, how to get texture onto flowers. Definitely have a look at that, and that's where I first look at the dry brush effect, and that's something that I'm going to focus on in the next few weeks. But in the meantime, I will tag that video on the end of this one if you want to go and check that out. So I'm just going to add a few more darker bits, and then I do add splatter. That's coming up as well. But the next time watercolour surprises you, ask yourself one question. What state was my paper in? The puddle state, the dry state, or the damp state? And the answer will usually explain exactly why the paint behaved the way it did. And then next time you can try and plan which state you're going to paint in, like I've done here. Once you can read the water on your paper, watercolour will hopefully start feeling a lot less mysterious. Let me know which water state you struggle with the most, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!